Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats as Chris Muller, Jeff Halvosa, Karen Coker, David Phillips, and your host, Matt Reynolds, join us to give a glimpse into our future together.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
Hey, everyone. Thank you guys for coming back, especially after last night. I think a bunch of us, especially the laughs over here. First of all, where's Danny and his guns? Danny. So get ready to play next year too. Also, just to take a look, the painting is done. All right, pretty amazing from start to finish. Please make sure you stop by, sign it. It really is all about bringing us together. It'll be hanging in the Peak office, so you guys have to come down and visit too. All right. So we are going to start. Want to move that on? Elvis. Okay. We're going to start today, really just talking through things that have changed in the firm, things that we're looking at and seeing in the industry, and really introducing your team now, as we talked about yesterday. So where we're going to start, I think, is the easiest. Is I think everybody knows our newest person is Jeff Halvosa, our new Chief Compliance Officer. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff's one of my favorites because now I don't have to do compliance. So, way to go, Jeff. All right, so let's just dig right in. Right, you guys have all seen a bunch going on this year. You guys have been busy working through commissions and operations and things like that. So, I guess from your perspective, Chris, what are some of the big things that we'll accomplish this year?
So I think that from accomplishments, I think I want to take a step back and reiterate what you were talking about being the team,
Yep.
right? So as you saw from yesterday, we've got two organizations, and what we're all doing across each of our areas of responsibility are taking the staff, that were at Thurston and the staff that were at Peak, and now they're becoming just the staff. So, just to let you guys know, you'll begin to see new names. We've moved Sean into a role overseeing kind of the day-to-day operations for both firms. You're going to start to see Hannah Jackson, and she'll be helping you guys out on a day-to-day basis. We've got processing individuals that are in Indy. We got some that are in Oklahoma. So we're going to leverage that in a way to become as efficient and effective for you guys as possible. So that's one of the big things that we're working on this year is, and I think everyone will talk about standardizing policies and procedures across the organization, but that's one thing that you guys are going to begin to experience. From a more operational and commission task completion over the last year, I think we've done a number of things both on the Thurston side and on the Peak side. So, operationally, Thurston, we just launched Forms Logic, which is a new workflow, has a lot of additional features that have been implemented. We'll continue to get feedback from the team and add enhancements over time, just like we do our workflow. So on the Peak side, through Peak Link, we did a number of things. We added the ability to use split rep codes when you open accounts. We increased the data points that are automatically mapped into things like the client profile, so less data entry. Another thing is we rolled out a service workflow so that you can take those one-off forms, load those in, not have to put them through the new account workflow. So there's less data you have to do to more quickly get that item processed. Initiatives on the commission side. We moved investment advisory into the Peak Link processing system. So you get commission statements. You've got visibility into what we're doing on a daily basis. You can see who's been processed, what's been processed. So if you have questions, it's very quickly to go online and see what's going on. So that then if you don't see something, you can reach out to us. Nina and her team, Jared and Julie, are there diligently working for each problem. So I would say, that's some of the things that we accomplished on this coming year. And then moving forward, some of the things that we're looking to do, and you'll start seeing it, communication this month for a June launch is what we talked about last year for the Peak workflow, which is the bundling. So now when you go through and you select the type of transaction and the customer, previously you get to the point where you have to know what forms are required to pick. Well, just like we talked last year, we've gone through, tested, we've had beta testers, we've gone through this process, and now we're ready to launch that fact that you'll get to the, I want to buy a mutual fund and an IRA direct, and it'll tell you these are the required forms. So you don't have to figure out what's required, and then you can add additional forms on that based upon how you get the funds there, or anything else that you need to add to that account. So once again, a way to try and minimize NIGO, minimize the amount of data entry that you have to do, and make sure that that gets processed as quickly as possible.
So, and if I can just not go off of our script here.
Sure.
Everyone in here, no surprise, has an opinion about what should be met as far as what needs to happen. How do you manage the planning of what we're going to get accomplished next year? Right? Just like you said, we got this done. Here's the process. What's the decision making, or how do you make those decisions?
So, it's actually kind of a consensus type thing, because there's things that are on my want list, right, that I think would make operations a lot more effective, but it may have an impact on compliance, or, I'm relying on David, or on Karen to figure out, okay, how are we going to oversee this? So we have to, as a team, look at what our priorities are and figure out what is going to be next in line that best serves the organization, and then we can schedule it and figure out what we're gonna put it on.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity in it. So a lot has changed, a lot accomplished this year. Why don't you just talk a little bit about what we've done?
Well, first I'll look at what's happening in cybersecurity. Security. As your other trends keep going about the school year, through 2024, FEI.
Microphone.
What's up? So for 2024 numbers from FBI, they had 850,000 cyber crimes reported to them. Of those 850,000 cyber crimes, the losses were $16 billion in losses. Those numbers went up 33% as of last year. When you take a look at who's being targeted the most, the age group 60 plus, so the elderly people are really being targeted more than anybody else. They had over $4 billion in losses last year. On top of that, if you take a look at 7,500 of those losses were over $100,000. So those are significant losses that go based on cyber crimes. And most of the crimes that are committed are based on phishing or spoofing. So social engineering is still the key point that the cyber criminals are using to target people. So you got to be very, very aware of what you're doing with your email, who you're communicating with on social media. Just be aware of those types of communications and be careful how you respond to those. If you see something that's not really, that looks funny, that doesn't seem like you should be responding to it, question it. Don't respond to it. If you need to justify it, try and reach out by another means and make sure that's a valid email, it's a valid response that you need to make. Now, the good thing about that, our people are very responsive to that. I want to thank you right now, because we get a lot of people who, this looks fishy, is this legit or not? And we appreciate that. That really helps us out, and we're happy to look at that. So send it to us. We'll take a look at it. We'll let you know whether it's a phishing email or whether it's a legit email, and we'll try to help you out in that extent. And if you go one step further, those of you who use Outlook, if you look at your Outlook email and you right-click on the email, you'll see a drop-down list of all the options that you can do for email. In that drop-down list, you'll see a reporting option. In that reporting option, you can report phishing. If you report that, then it goes out to Microsoft, so it goes out to a bigger audience, and you can help protect not only us, but the rest of the industry as well from phishing attacks. So that's very important that you do that as well, if you take the time to do that step. And just so that Jump may have some other issues that he want to bring up around cybersecurity. So
yeah, I have a couple of comments. Thank you, David. And I know Karen does as well. What I wanted to point out was, if you look at the recent rulemaking, that kind of tells you the priority of the regulators. You have 20649, which is the cybersecurity rule for investment advisor, proposed rule, not in effect yet. and you have 206 or 11, which is the third-party vendor rule, and third-party vendor cybersecurity. So, for example, FINRA just in their 2025 priorities list mentioned that they're worried about, for example, certain vendors in the industry. I'll use Global Relay as an example, whose service is about 40% of the industry. If they have a major breach, what FINRA is looking at is 40% of the industry having a major breach. So this is a very, very high priority item, and probably the most, in my opinion, the most high priority item for regulators right now. I did want to mention, I did want to mention a couple of stories from personal experience. In the last couple of years, I've seen 2 cases where money went out the door. David made the point that, you know, our clients are older, right? And they're going to be those vulnerable adults that are subject to spear phishing, to social engineering. And so basically, if you get an email from your client, you should question the email right away. Be skeptical, because it's those clients, it's those older clients that are getting the email account takeovers, right? So you may get an email from your client. I know their email address. I know that's them. But until you pick up the phone and call and verify, you don't actually know it's them. So the 2 cases I was referencing, that's exactly what happened. The advisor never picked up the phone to verify. What happened in one case specifically was all of a sudden there was this request for money, and the client never used to ask for money. And so the advisor was in the spirit of customer service was like, oh yeah, let me get on that. Let me get you your money right away. Whereas he should have been thinking, you know, Joe never asked for money. Maybe I should call Joe and say, hey, Joe, what's going on that you're asking for money? And I'm happy to get it to you. I just want to make sure it's you and you're asking. So in both cases, one case, 40,000 went out the door. The other case, 80,000 went out the door. Neither of those advisors called the client to verify the instructions. And I can tell you, when money goes out the door, Chris will tell you, it's gone. I've never seen a callback work where it was for nefarious reasons if the money went out the door. The bad actors are waiting on the other side for that money to show up and takes it. So, Karen, I know you had a few items.
So I just want to expand upon what David and Jeff both spoke about. You know, AI, it is a great tool. It is something that, you know, we have to embrace to move forward with the technology. But we also have to also recognize those risks that come with AI. Anybody can go onto YouTube, purchase a program for $70, and they can take a video or just a picture from your client's social media, create a video with their voice. So you could be doing a Teams call with what you think is your client, and it really is not them. So as much as we think that, you know, we're talking to them, we're seeing them, that's their voice, it may not actually be them. You've got to look for those telltale signs that that's not what normally my client would do. You know, something you might start think about doing, because everybody can find everybody's mother's maiden name. Social media, you have that plastered everywhere. You can find your kids' information. I mean, it's just how we live our lives now. So maybe think about doing it as a passcode that is not personal to that client, that maybe you'll sign in, and if they're asking for money or asking for something that's different than what they have normally done in the past, ask them for that special passcode that you have assigned to them. Then you'll know that, okay, you're not talking to AI. Was it, I can't remember, it was Jeff or David that we were talking, but when you're you know, on AI, it was you. Yeah, the image. You can have them turn. AI is not supposed to be able to, you know, direct you, say turn left, turn right. So have them turn, make different movements at your request.
I would relate it to, for example, seniors are being subject to these frauds where the grandmother gets the call and says, "We have your grandson. Your grandson just got a DUI, or you know, they're in jail and they need out." And that's where they'll, oh well, look, we're FaceTiming. Let me show you the picture of your grandson. And so that's where it's fraud.
So I mean, you know, we're supposed to be the protectors of our clients. You know, we're not trying to be intrusive and make it hard for clients to receive their money. But when you present it to your clients, like, you know, we're trying to protect you. We're trying to ensure that you're not being prodded. They are more understanding at the extra steps we have to go through for verification of this is, you know, why are you withdrawing this money, or, you know, I need to verify that this truly is you. I've got to make a verbal phone call. My operations principals have to make a verbal phone call to verify that this is the amount you're wiring over to this place, especially over certain thresholds. We have those in place. So,
Yeah. How many people here have outside business? right? You have CPA, okay. So something that we talked about here, and it's important, is the cybersecurity is changing. The insurance world is changing everything. So any more new cyber, policies require dual authentication. It sounds simple, right? It sounds like it should be in place, but think about that for a second. In essence, cybersecurity is now in a position where they say, look, we're not going to fund you, we're not going to defend you unless you follow the rules and you have dual authentication. They also have callback provisions for firms like ours. It's just a requirement anymore. So it's not just part of new policies and procedures we're rolling out, but there's also a case where it's just a business case. Right? So that's one. The other is for those people who do have outside businesses, vendors, right? Vendor due diligence. So we go through that on an annual basis, right? Sounds simple enough. I know my vendors, right? I chose, I chose eMoney, or I chose Black Diamond or whatever. Every time you make a decision to use a third party system, to use a different type of portal, to use some other CRM, understand that every one of those has to be vetted. We do it.
Yeah.
Right. So we reach out to you on an annual basis, right, and get the information. And then David, what's the job that goes into doing the vendor due diligence at that?
Well, it's a little complicated depending on the vendor, on what they have available to us. Some of them have a easy option to get into their databases and pull documents like SOC reports and other reports that give a detailed description of how they protect their systems, how to protect our fine data, and others are not so simple. So you have to do a little bit of digging to get into it, and do a little research on your own to try to find out that information.
And I think part of that is what Matt was saying is what each of you guys use in your offices as it relates to the broker dealer, the independent RIA, is something that, like, we sent a survey out last year to find out what you're doing, and Tanya and I were talking about it yesterday, that there's due diligence that has to go on from our side, to make sure that they are meeting data security or cybersecurity requirements, because you may be sharing information with them, knowingly or unknown. And so that's a critical part of us making sure that we have the outsourcing controls for the firms that we outsource, as well as the ones that you outsource. So,
and I know it sounds like we're just beating this to death, but the important thing is, especially for those people who do have those outside businesses, the people here who have their own REIs, understand what we were just talking about, right? The new rules are, SEC is now making decisions about what a correct, cybersecurity policy is and what it isn't. So we're constantly dancing with that. So for those people who do have that, reach out to David. I'll just give it away. His cell phone numbers. Reach out to David, and he'll help you through understanding kind of what our understanding is. Jeff has spent a lot of time working with third-party RIAs, right? Absolutely, like 50, 60 of them.
Well, in Dallas, we were at 10. Sorry, at 250. In Dallas, we were at 10, so we had 250 managers. Actually, 250 models, 50 managers, and about 75 utility advisors. So, yeah, absolutely, I've seen a lot of you.
So, for example, when you look at kind of your prior firms, right, where we spent a lot of time consulting to RIAs, right? How did you marry the overbearing feeling, right? Because we all do it. I feel the same way. How did you manage and bring those together, right? Here are the rules. Here's best practice. And here's what, it's easy.
And I think it's just like I did earlier, showing real life examples, sharing real life examples where these things, for example, you mentioned 2FA. I recently spent time with my stepmother, who my dad just passed away about 6 months ago, so she's recently widowed. And I sat down with her and made sure all of her accounts were two-factor. That's little things you can do with your clients. Make sure that the systems that you're interacting with, or even the systems you're interacting with, you turn on that two-factor authentication. So that's an example. But yeah, one thing I want to mention too, while we're happy to share as much due diligence as we can, when you're doing due diligence on a vendor, a lot of times you have to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure. And so it becomes very challenging to be able to share some of that information. So when you guys engage various third-party vendors, make sure you're reaching out and make sure you're creating that file and evidencing that you're doing that due diligence, because we can't always share everything we have with you due to non-disclosure.
I agree. Perfect. All right. So I think we really just run it into the ground. Everyone's done with cybersecurity. Okay. So, oh, okay. Wait. I'm sorry, guys. I'm waiting.
We talk about protecting people, protecting their systems. We also have to protect you guys. As a result of that, we're going to have to start doing an annual computer review. So we'll be reaching out to you later this year and detailing what we got to do for that. Just so you know, it's not a deep dive of the computer system. It's making sure that we cover the main elements of our information security policy. Like, do you have a two-factor authentication? Do you have the right operating system? Are you using the right devices? Are you updating your operating system on a regular basis? Things like that we'll be looking into. So we'll have to review those types of things. In addition to that, also, as we join Thurston, we got some compliance disclosures that have to be changed. So your email disclosures that have to be changed. So we'll be working with you to make sure we can help you get through that and update your email profile so that you get the right disclosures under emails. So that's coming up later this year.
And they, like you mentioned, and it's important, but out on the website under IT, you have the information security program, and in that it stipulates, what is the minimum requirement you have to have in your office for Wi-Fi networks and that kind of stuff. So definitely, if you've not read it, get an AI bot to read it and kick out what you need to do. So,
Like, and it's important. So it always feels overly intrusive, right? Someone's going into your computer, right? It's going to be Alvis, and I think everyone likes Alvis. That's why we get to do it. But for the most part, it feels very intrusive. The truth is, the reason that we do it that way is because we try and give everyone in dial gear. We're not today making decisions on your app. We're not issuing you certain types of tools. We're allowing you to do that. So in the same vein, we need to make sure that those policies and procedures that are written are being followed. And the only way to do that is through this kind of audit or examination process. All right. But again, David, you'll be reaching out to everybody. Not yet. Okay. Second half of the year. Right. Okay. Perfect.
You'll see the whole time. Okay. We'll reach out to you then.
All right. Perfect. So getting off that subject. It's getting off that subject. We talked about the enterprise, right? And how we now have, it's not just Jupiter, right? It is Jupiter, Indy, Oklahoma, even Acoustic. What, I'm going to ask you from an operational standpoint, from a supervision standpoint, what does that mean to everybody out here, right? Does that mean that they're going to have to call Indy for this, and then you're going to have to call Oklahoma for that? I mean, how do you bring everything together?
So, I mean, thankfully, operationally, because the way we have the system structured, I mean, you will continue to call the home office that you currently call for support. However, how we assign work through the back end and how we cross-train people on the peak link system versus the my client, or, I mean, I'm not thinking of my client, I'm thinking of the Forms Logic. There we go. I was going to say Form Site, but that's a different system. Yeah. Once we cross train people, we'll be able to then shift depending upon where we see the need. So, I think operationally it's a much less of an impact until we decide to change the service model, which at some point we will. And then, we may centralize the servicing aspect. But right now, I think that you'll continue to submit work the way you submit work. The only difference that you see is that people that you're not used to reaching out to you, instead of Sean giving you a call, might be Samantha, might be, someone else, Maureen or someone who's asking you the question. So it's important. We'll put their, names and everything, so you're familiar, that that this is an appropriate person calling you with questions, or you'll see it kick back to you with that person. So that would be probably operationally the only impact that I would think that you would see in the short term. And then long term, obviously, any change that we make, we'll communicate and let you guys know. But I think to your overall point, one of the things that we're definitely looking at is, we talked about, limits, calling limits, policies and procedures. We are going to look as best we can, standardize that across the firm so that there's a consistency. There shouldn't be a different limit at Thurston that there's not at Peak if there is no structural reason behind that. So that is definitely an area that we're all working on and out of. Karen and Jeff, any comments on that?
Well, right. Thank you, Chris. Right now I'm new, but I've been tasked with looking at the enterprise level procedures and policies so that we can assimilate all that and create efficiencies. Karen, myself, and Chris have already started conversations about how we can process business more effectively and efficiently and compliantly. So those are the high level things that I'm working on to try to bring all the entities together.
Sure. And to be honest, I mean, us bringing all the processes together is actually better for us. So we don't have to figure out, oh, for this firm, we're doing it this way, and this firm, we're doing it this way. It keeps us in line and keeping business moving forward because we're not forgetting which firm we're looking and reviewing for.
Yeah, I think this is important. Remember yesterday we talked about culture. Right? One of the reasons that this made sense was we're bringing a lot of different types of talent, right? That from both firms into Sequel. The reason that culture is so important is because of what these guys are just saying. If I were you and I didn't understand that this is part of what we do, if I didn't know kind of rating the fee for the past 2.5 years, if I didn't know the folks on here, one of the questions I would ask is, well, if we're making it all the same, does that mean it's getting harder to do business? And the answer is no, right? And I'm gonna let Jeff especially talk through the policy and procedure, but the culture is the same. The idea is, how do we get to yes, right? How do we make it easier to do business? How do we still protect the clients? Those are the same missions across all the entities. So by bringing everything together, right, working from it doesn't have to be a one-off or anything. We know what the job is, right? The job is taking care of you guys and your clients. And now it's just kind of solidifying and doing that across both entities, right? So is that what you've seen, Jeff? I mean, I know that we're talking about the many different firms that have come together here working through it. But when you look at that, what's your approach to trying to make sure that everything's kind of consistent across the entities?
Yeah, again, like I mentioned, it's looking at those enterprise level processes. Like, for example, we've already incorporated MCO for both sides on the Thurston side and the Peak side. So as far as reporting your outside business activities, your private securities transactions, your personal brokerage accounts, that's already, I'm already working on getting common language for all of that so that it's one process for everyone. You call in, you get the same answer, irrespective of who you talk to. So.
Right. And then, on those reviews on MCO, and you have Jeff, myself, Tara, and Jake, and Katie, we're part of those review process. So everybody on both sides, of Thurston and Peak, they're seeing the same name. So you're not getting different answers. It's going to be uniform.
So I guess from that standpoint, looking into the future, right? So again, I'll start them this and head that way. We all know that there's going to be changes this year, kind of rolling into the end of the year, things that we had to put in place both operationally as well as from compliance and regulatory. So let's just start looking at this kind of next year, next 12 months, next 18 months. What are some of the things that we're going to accomplish, right, in each one of your discrete areas? What are those things that we're going to accomplish? And what are those things that you see that we're going to have to address that we may not be thinking about yet? You want to start, Carl?
So, yeah, I mean, I think obviously the largest thing that we are going to accomplish this year is the transition from Raymond James over to First Clearing. And so that's going to be a mid-year event. It's going to, we've already done a lot of preparation for that, and it's going to be a lot of communication to get you guys involved and make sure that you understand what's happening so you can feed that to the clients. So that's great. I think that process is then going to make what we're talking about, standardized process and procedures, easier, because now we're on a common platform. The only caveat to the comments we made earlier is that, Pete cleared Raymond James and Thurston cleared First Clearing. So there could be structural differences between what one firm requires versus the other. So I'll think that through the year, you'll see us, as we standardize that, we'll be able to take the best practices across both firms and figure out what is the most effective way to process as far as limits or forms or ways that the various workflow systems work. So, operationally, the big push is that conversion to first query and then standardizing the processes. From a commission standpoint, it's going to be trying to move tag, I think, into the same commission processing system that we use now, so that you still have that same visibility that you do on both your brokerage and your advisory business, and you can see what is posted, immediately. So I think those are the two big initiatives that we're working on for this year.
Sure. What about you, Diego?
My focus is really on the data process aspect of the information. We're trying to get more data into the Salesforce database. So as we see data coming in for all of our vendors, we're making sure we get that migrated to Salesforce. Also, last year I spent a lot of time in the Advisor platform. Some of you use Advisor. Spent a lot of time just trying to absorb what that platform does, how it works, and how to help you make sure that your data is clean in that environment as well. So still focusing on trying to make sure that we can get all the rep codes set up properly, get all the accounts set up properly. If any missing accounts are missing, researching that, try to get those, make to the proper rep codes and things like that. So just making sure that the data is clean and working well for everyone who wants to use it.
I think and Dave and I work really closely on that on the peak side. And I think, as I mentioned yesterday, I think Thurston's done a really good job of bringing the data in, and we'll piggyback off of a lot of the work they've done on the first clearing side, as we've had some challenges bringing in the Raymond James data. I think that's fair. But the point is to make sure that we have that information in Peak Link for you. I mean, we did a data enrichment process this year, where we went back and we looked at all of the forms that had been submitted and stored in OCR. Those forms, pulled the data off of it, compared to what was in the customer, and made sure that what was there was reported in the database, to make sure that we had all of the information. We're moving in activity, we're moving in position. So we want Peak Link, obviously, to be the place that you go, where you have a holistic view of your clients, positions, activity, all the documents that you've worked on, commission statements. So it's that one-stop shop that you need to go to help you run your business. So Dave's, I know David's been working on that diligently, and will continue to do that the board of this year or so.
I'm gonna skip over you. I'm gonna go with compliance first, and then to how that affects suppression.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, for me, I do want to talk a little bit about regulation best interest. It was passed in 2020. It's now the regulators are getting back out and starting to examine firms for regulation best interest. And what I would say is, don't let it scare you. There are 4 obligations when it comes to regulation best interest. There's the disclosure obligation, the care obligation, the conflicts obligation, and the compliance obligation. So if I go through that again, the disclosure obligation is just what it is. What are the fees associated? What's the liquidity of the product? What is unique about the risk that the client might be taking on? The care obligation should kind of trigger reasonably available alternatives. What other options could you have recommended that would be in the ballpark, a reasonable alternative? Conflicts of interest, I always just say follow the money. So are you making a commission on the sale? Or is it an advisory product that you're selling? Are there trail commissions, right? So that's what can present conflicts. And then the compliance obligation is just memorializing everything you just did. FINRA always says, if you don't document what you did, you didn't do it. So the compliance obligation on Form BI, Reg BI, is just that. Evidence, record your discussion about disclosure, about the care obligation, and about the conflicts, and then you should be all set. I think, Karen, you want to talk about some of what our experience has been. Yeah.
And so, just going to go back to regulation best interest. Whenever you're listing out, what did you compare to this product to be able to offer this one? Some of the things Tara's been seeing is where you're comparing high commission products. But some of the things you should be looking at whenever that you're listing out those different items that you've compared to is, the product has more than 100 spuns, so sub accounts, and to choose from. Did you actually consider an advisory fee, fee-based account for this client? If so, then why did you choose the annuity over that? If the client had a 0 return for the past 3 years? Did you look and see if maybe that was what was supposed to happen, and now they're looking for something else? Or you can't just pick out the high high commission based products to say this is what you compare to make this annuity look better. Actually, look and see these are the reasonable products that we said, that we thought about for this client, that this is what fits for their situation. And speaking about the regulation best interest, one of the biggest things with supervision is when you are recommending a stock and it is not in an advisory account, you've got to make sure you're making the notes of your recommendations. What were the other things you compared to? If we're not finding those notes on the supervision side, we're having to reach out to you. If you're not making those notes, that also is what kind of, can get you hung up in an arbitration because you did not make those notes for us to go back to compare to.
So I do want to make a comment on what you just said about the notes. From my experience with arbitration cases, I've seen instances where the advisor is in an arbitration with the client, and in front of the arbitration panel, the advisor has a great file, copious notes on everything that happened, recreate the history right there, and the client has no notes. And I've seen cases where the advisors defended and successfully defended themselves. So I can't stress enough how important those notes and those files are.
And it's important to make those notes at the time of those conversations with those clients. You can't go back 2 years later and then put those in there. Don't wait till supervision's calling you asking for those notes. Make those notes, put them into your CRN. If you're still a paper guy, make those notes, put them into your client file, and then have them ready for us to send to us as soon as we call and we're asking for them.
So we'll touch on one last topic, and then we want to open up a question. But my understanding, and there's a number of people here who have their independent RIAs. My understanding is there's now going to be an AML exam or an AML process for RIAs. So can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing there? What's that going to entail, and then how it fits inside it? The relationship with broker.
Yeah, it's an interesting fit because broker dealers and clearing firms are required to have AML, have always, in recent years, have been required to have AML programs where they're doing all the CIP, right? They're identifying the client positively. If it's an entity, then of course we do the enhanced due diligence to find out the human being on the other end of the transaction. Initially, when this rule came out, I thought what we were going to see was investment advisors, independent investment advisors, lean on their custodians basically as third-party vendors to say, hey, you're doing all the AML, you're doing it for me. There's been a bit of pushback from the regulators to just do that. They want the RIAs to be a little more engaged. I do think that ultimately what the solution is going to be is kind of a hybrid there. You're going to rely on the broker dealers to do certain things. You're probably going to want attestations from that broker dealer for what they're doing for you. And then just like anything else, you have to do your due diligence and vet to make sure those things are actually happening. So those will be some of the effects of independent RIAs.
So for anyone who does have an independent RIA, one of the things I would remind you is, as that rule comes in, I think we'll be obviously releasing new rules across Thurston Springer Advisors as well as as well as Blackbridge. But if you have questions or if you have your own programs that you're building, work with Jeff, right? Let's figure out how you can rely on the broker dealer, but at the same time, making sure that the tools that you're using are going to get you there. So that's really it. Any last minute?
Yeah, I just had a couple of housekeeping. I'm compliance. Like, I don't know if housekeeping.
I know.
So the one thing I want to remind everyone is texting. We have given you my rep chat. Please use that. Off-channel communications are a big deal to regulators right now. You don't want to be caught using off-channel communications. So if you're going to be texting with your clients, use that my rep chat. Also, remember last year things changed with regulatory continuing ed. You need to get on FinPro and get that done every year now. Don't wait till the last minute. I've seen it so many times where someone waits until the end of December, their computer craps out or their Wi-Fi wasn't working and they go CE inactive on January 1st. And by the way, if you're not familiar with CE inactive, we can't pay you when you're CE inactive. So that should be the motivating factor to get that done. And then the other thing I wanted to add was investment advisor representatives now, many states are requiring CE there. So that is done. Your best resource, in my opinion, there is NASA, not the space agency, but the state model rule board. It's NASAA, so www.nasaa.org. That's where you can go and see if your state requires CE, and also not just where you're located, what states are you registered in, right? So if you're here in Florida and you're also registered in California, then you need to look at the CE requirements for both states. And then in doing that, the resources are there. For example, I did some the other day for my own license. And I use Reg Ed. I had to go straight to Reg Ed to get that done. So it is autonomous. You do it kind of on your own. And I do want to warn you that it was real. It took me a couple hours to get 3 credits done. So don't think that it's going to be like the old CE that you kind of blow off. It's actually pretty real, and you kind of got to read through and look at those videos. So, but get that CE done and get it done early. So this is off your plate. You don't have to worry about it.
And on the advisor side, just again, it's your responsibility. But I think one other thing we want to do is make sure that you guys are always aware, right? What's coming up? What's due? What do you need to do? So we'll try to figure out how to help you guys as well. Not just having you out there, but obviously we're just monitoring that for your benefit as well. Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right, David, what was the quiet one? Okay, so we've got about 4 minutes left. Any open questions? Anyone? Here.
Gamers, is there a way for us to take our CRMs, so the Red Tail, the Wildfire, and have them interface with have our CRMs interface with Peak Link so that we're not double? Because I know I got to put stuff in Wellbox and I put notes there, and then I got to come over to our system and put all that data in a second time, and of course with the system now multiple times, it leaves a lot of room for errors.
We don't have a solution right now to API into our Peak Link platform. But that's a program that's run by Sycamore using a Salesforce database. But I'll look into that and see if there's some solutions out there for that. But right now we don't have it.
Okay, the other question I have is regarding the increased firm element we have to do on the RA side. Who kicks the courses? Are they mandated certain courses? Because it seemed like we did the FINRA portion, and then I went to do the RA portion, and it was like 100%, almost 100% repetition of the same information. That I said there was another 13 hours of.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I said, I just went in and did some last week, and I had to kind of read the top course description to see, like, it kind of ended with IARCE, and so that's how I picked it, just making sure I'm getting the IARCE. But they're fairly prescribed. You may have some flexibility, like there may be 10 different courses offered, and you may have to take 3 of them, something like that. But there's going to be a limited universe of what's like.
But just to make sure you're aware, if you're taking your FINRA CE, you get to use 6 hours of that FINRA CE to go to your IARCE. So you only have 6 hours more to take, and it's usually on professional responsibility and ethics.
Okay, so last year that wasn't pointed out, so I did 13 and 13. I mean, you're losing almost a week's worth of time that you want to put clients to do continuing education. And as far as I could see, I was assigned the courses I had to take, and they were repetitious.
So Joe, one of the things to remember is, like you said, we have the FINRA, which is HAIL now. So we have courses that are regulatory CE. Also, we have to do firm element. It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because you're already going through that on an annual basis. But what we attempted to do last year, obviously, Jeff and Karen will be working on it going forward. What we tried to do was really focus on those courses that could get you through, and they were related to your business. So yeah, in a lot of cases, I think that's what Joe's talking about. Yeah, the assignments, picking the ones that actually make sense, and then the repetitive nature. Unfortunately, sometimes regulation states that you have to have a certain amount of CE. So I hate to say it, sometimes we'll halt in that position. I have an insurance license, so I'm with you. I spend much time on that, my regulatory CE, as well as any designations, and then your firm element. Anything else? Because otherwise, we're down to the last 44-second guy. Anyway, all right, we're gonna kill it. Thank you guys for taking the time. Sorry about listening to us.